And joining us at the Roundtable this week, Danny Kafitz is with us now, the founder and director of North Country Honor Flight. Also joining us, two veterans, World War II veterans, Earl Schmidt from Plattsburgh and also Jim Hayes from Keysville. Welcome to you both. We appreciate you being here. Danny, welcome. Nice to see you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about how Honor Flight got started.
Well, there's two stories. There's a national story and there's our story. Where would you?
Well, let's start nationally.
All right. In 03, 04, when the memorial was being built, bear in mind it took 65 years for America to get around to building a memorial for our World War II veterans. A retired Air Force captain named Earl Morse in Columbus, Ohio, was a physician's assistant at a VA clinic there. As the memorial was nearing completion, he knew from his VA records who the World War II vets were that would come into his clinic. He would ask them, "Are you going to go to your memorial?" And they were positive they wanted to go. They were excited. They were looking forward to its completion and opening. It was completed in late 04. And there was a big wave of eagerness to see their memorial, just universally with all of his World War II vets. After the memorial had been opened, the same vets would come back into his clinic, and Earl would ask him immediately, "Did you go? How was it?" "No, I didn't go." And then he found out that was not the occasional guy. It was universal. None of them had been, and he would ask him, and it was the same answers. "I'm too old. I don't travel. It's too expensive. I don't have the means to get there. I wouldn't know anybody else there." So he took matters in his own hands. He also happened to be a private pilot. He gave a big speech at a safety meeting for pilots. 11 other pilots joined with him. They chartered 12 two-seat Cessna 130s or some small aircraft, paid all of the costs themselves out of their own pockets, took 12 veterans to the memorial. Each pilot escorted his veteran, which is the source of the guardians we have now. Best day of their lives. They came home. Within about a week, Earl had 430 requests from other veterans in Ohio, and that was the founding of Honor Flight, to deal with this demand. So what he did would have been amazing on just a personal note if it stopped there. Since then, Honor Flight has flown 114,000 World War II vets in 8 years. We now have 122 chapters. We are the newest in the United States. We have flown 5 flights this year, 82 veterans, and we are planning on more flights, bigger aircraft, more veterans next year.
But the idea behind it is the same, that these heroes deserve to see the memorial dedicated to them.
Absolutely. If you look, the reason Earl Morse's story is interesting is because it's also the reason. We get a lot of requests, "Are you going to take Vietnam vets?" I don't know, the Vietnam Memorial, it's beautiful and they deserved it. The average Vietnam veteran, it was built 7 years after the war ended, so 1981, let's say. These guys were 29 years old when their memorial was built. They don't need a foundation to raise money to get them there. They've had 40 years of their best middle-aged years of their life, if you will, to travel there, families, kids, whatever. It is not the same as somebody that waited 65 years, and literally the monument for them was too late in their life to be of value. The most universal thing we hear on an honor flight is, "If it wasn't for Honor Flight, I would have never gone. I would have never seen this." And we are losing our World War II veterans of the 16.1 million that served. The number now is just right at 1 million remaining. There are various estimates, anywhere from 600 to 800 or 1,000 passing away per day. So it is late even for Honor Flight to try to do what we're hoping to do. You had mentioned Wisconsin. Wisconsin had Operation Resolve in 06 or 07, early on. They did fly every single living World War II veteran in Wisconsin. They were chartering twin 747s on the same day, 480 passengers. They were raising $250,000 a night at Miller Stadium for this. And that was their point, Operation Resolve. A radio disc jockey just took this thing and got the entire state of Wisconsin involved. I believe South Carolina may have flown every single veteran. We fly smaller aircraft. We just went down on this trip. with both Jim and Earl and 13 other World War II veterans from right here. And it's a 34-seat aircraft. We have 4 officers on board. So 15 veterans, 15 guardians. The bigger metropolitan areas are flying like A40s, 80 seats, 737-200s, 135 seats. And the real big areas, Chicago, Milwaukee, Atlanta, they're flying the biggest aircraft there is, and the costs are just stratospheric. Even the small jets we charter are expensive. You think you got problems at the gas pump, try buying jet fuel.
But you're filling every seat. The demand is there.
We've got a waiting list, Tom. We've got a waiting list. The demand is the only thing that we need is exposure. Because what will happen is whatever day you air this, the next day 3 or 4 veterans from the more far-flung areas will sign up. We will find the money. We will find the aircraft. We have a crew that is just second to none. Our directors, the dedication that we have to what we're doing, that will never slack off or fail. It is our single biggest issue is to find the veterans. How many World War II veterans are in Scioto or Altona? We don't even know where those people live.
And you cover all of the North Country and Vermont.
5 counties. We've been as far down as Diamond Point, which is the southern tip of Lake George. We had on our September 14th flight, which was 2 aircraft. That was quite a feat to get 2 birds in the air in one day. We had a delegation of 7 from Whitehall. That's, well, I'll put it this way. On September 14th, we pick up every veteran at their house in the morning, usually with the motorcycle escort, often with a police escort. It starts when they take their slippers off and step out on the porch. We do not allow the veterans to drive home at the end of the day. A lot of them are still excellent drivers, but we're concerned both about the lateness of our return, the impact of the whole day emotionally, not just that they're tired from the travel, but it's an emotional day, so that wears on you. And we don't allow the veterans to drive. It's one of the rules I never flex on. I win that argument every time, and you can ask Carl Hobbs if you know him.
He wanted to drive. And gentlemen, I'll get to you in just a moment, but since you brought it up, Danny, and you're talking about it, you spare no expense. You go to such great lengths to give these veterans a day to remember, right from the very beginning, when they're picked up at their home, to the flag ceremony on the Oval at the Old Plattsburgh Air Force Base. The community comes in and gives them a motorcade and a hero's escort to the airport. And you folks give them a day to remember.
My standard, which just through, I don't know, I don't think there's a good way to describe it. My example, which I don't flex on whatsoever, has been everything Honor Flight does has to be the best it can possibly be. We have no, we'll get it better next time, we'll get it right next time, we'll do a better job, we learned something, we won't make that mistake again. Our first flight, right out of the chute, was as perfect as anything I've ever seen. Other Honor Flights now are just saying, the way you guys do it. I get the discharge on every man. You'll see they each get a full set of their medals. We look this up no matter how much it takes us to find the information, and we have all of their campaign ribbons. Earl's wearing the Bronze Star, Combat Infantry Badge. We know exactly where they served, and we get all the appropriate ribbons for them. This is so if they don't have their ribbons anymore, or if they never received their full decorations after they were discharged. For some of them, they're in a war box behind glass, and they don't want to take them out, and we don't want them wearing their big ribbons anyway. These are called mini ribbons. They're half size. We have one man on just this, just discharges and decorations, to make sure we don't miss anything as important as a Bronze Star. I can tell you without even looking, Jim's wearing a combat action ribbon. That's, and he didn't know he had that. That was a retroactive award to all men in the Pacific that were in combat in the Navy. The jackets, we could get by with a sweatshirt or something. We go down there, we look like we're out of an Ivy League school or something, and that's because we choose to do that. We are very, very meticulous about the planning. All of our directors are military veterans themselves. So we have a very military work ethic, if you will. It's about logistics. It's not about baking cookies for them and patting them on the back. There's nothing patronizing. We go down there, they think they're back in the service, some of them. I mean, I get a phone call, guys are calling me their commander, and what do I, but it's not that we're on that level personally. But there is a little, and would you agree with me? There is a little bit of a military sense that we are a unit when we go down there. And it's not, come on, boys, it's like, fall in, gentlemen, and they do. And as you just were there, we just did a service. We give back to the community we were asked to attend. And again, that's a military service to us. It's not a class reunion. So I hope I'm not off track if I even remember your question, but I think you were asking, why do we do things to such a high standard? There's just no other way to do this. If you're not going to do it, and the expectations, these men are so humble, and they could be so angry over this, waiting their entire life without getting any credit for literally having saved the world. I mean, come on, this wasn't, just something that only military people can assess if it had an impact. Had an impact on every person watching this show tonight. Every living person in America owes these two and 16.1 million others. The entire American way of life is what was at stake. We forgot to say thank you as a nation. Well, and you would think they would be bitter about that, and they're not. When we finally get them to that memorial, it's like that was enough. This one thank you that I waited this long for, this late in life, it's the opposite of too little, too late. It's so little, but it is not too late. So time is pressing for us. We don't have the luxuries other groups that are doing good things have. If you're going to Nicaragua, I got news for you. They've been starving for 100 years. They'll be starving for the next 100. Whether you skip a flight or not, in the grand scheme of things, bringing food to these people and all these charitable things they're doing, it is critical, but it is not necessarily urgent. We have an urgency. We're running, not walking, and time is running out.
And you want it to be perfect because it's that important.
It is that important, and it is also just, it's just your duty. Once you pick up something like this, the enthusiasm and the dedication we have. I have people tell me, I have never in my life been in an organization where I look forward to going to the meetings. I cannot wait to get, we meet every 2 weeks, Tom. We've been doing that. And bear in mind, we were founded on January 30th. We did 5 flights this year. We have a core group of 12 directors and officers. I just talked to John Paddock, the director of the Syracuse flight. They have 125 volunteers. They did 2 flights this year. So the numbers we are working with, the results we are getting are just beyond what we reached for in the beginning, and now that's not enough. Next year we're going to run at least 7 aircraft, more tandem flights, and we are already looking at bigger aircraft for next year. And then you mentioned that, the parade, all that stuff is nice. We don't even count that. Somebody said to me at our last flight, if this is all you did, if it was the flag ceremony, the 100 motorcycles, the parade, you took them somewhere, you gave the speeches, and then you turn right around and send them back to Plattsburgh, and that was the end of it. That's a ceremony that most organizations would be proud of. We don't even count that. We're not even here. When we go wheels up, that's when the honor flights start. So, and we don't have to do that. And we don't have to do 2 ceremonies. But we want the military side of it on the old base, Reveille, and we're taking off from the airport. We got to get there one way or the other. We might as well get there in style, big motorcade. And it also, there is a very big impact of honor flight. People can never have heard of it, and I get comments like, I went to an honor flight ceremony, and people are so moved by this, they appreciate the opportunity. I think America, without wearing it on the shoulder every day, I think America is carrying a sense of guilt for having neglected our military in general, having actually been abusive to our military in Vietnam. and having simply forgot about these guys because they're old. Well, I'll tell you, they weren't old on D-Day. They were 19 years old. They weren't old at Tarawa or Saipan or Okinawa. They were 17, 18, 19. World War II was won by teenagers. 3,000 men on an aircraft carrier. The average age was 19. The pilots were 22. They were the old guys because they had to have 2 years of flight training. They looked at those pilots like they were old men because the ships, these massive warships, were being run by teenagers. The kids you see skateboarding today were running 16-inch guns and flying aircraft. And I think America, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but I think deep down inside, it's like, oh, we sort of buried that, but we feel like America owes somebody something, and America always pays its debts. I'm not talking about the fiscal side. I'm saying in this sense, we've always done the right thing by other countries and by Americans in general, and we miss this one, and we think the longer it is, the less it'll bother us. But I believe people are happy to be present to see these guys. When we hit Washington, it is phenomenal, the reception.
It really is.
Let me ask you, gentlemen, the send-off you had, 6 o'clock in the morning, to see that many people coming to send you off, what was that like?
Fantastic, really.
And then at the airport, another ceremony, another send-off, huge crowds.
The whole situation from beginning to end was just unbelievable. It really strikes home, just like your day in the military when you're starting early in the morning and they roll you out of bed and go from there. Well, they started off with reveille in the morning and away we went.
Yeah.
And it was full speed all day. And the reception, the whole thing, I just couldn't get over personally. It was such an emotional affair that, well, a couple times I know I lost it.
Me too.
And when you got to the World War II Memorial, what was that experience like when you saw that for the first time with your own eyes?
Well, the last time I had been in Washington prior to this visit, it was a plot of grass. I knew that the memorial was being constructed, but I had never had the opportunity to see it. I had seen a lot of Washington and so forth prior to that, and it was just an awesome affair. They did a wonderful job on it, and the Honor Flight's done a great job.
And it had to be such a powerful day. I mean, you start at the World War II Memorial, you go to the Arlington National Cemetery, the Tomb of the Unknown. It just...
It was awesome. I couldn't believe the depth that everything was. It just seemed fantastic. When you see things like this on TV, you just get a little glimpse of things. But when we went to the memorials and the cemetery, it just brings tears to your eyes.
Yes, it does.
I still can't get over it. I want to thank Danny because I wasn't going to go.
It would have been next to impossible, really, for you gentlemen to go. If you didn't do it this way, where you were flown the same day and taken right there, escorted there and back, it would be impossible to go.
It was just fantastic.
But what Earl was referring to is not that he couldn't have gone without an honor flight. It's that he did not want to go. He had signed up and he changed his mind, much like the Earl Morse story. Too old, too tired, too far. His wife told me, well, Earl changed his mind, he's not going. And I wasn't mad, but I was defeated, because I knew that if he went, he would feel like he feels now. But you cannot describe it. You can't explain it. So how do you get a stranger to trust you? And literally, the only answer I had for him is you have to go. It's not like you should go or we want you to go or why don't you wait and see. Well, fortunately, his wife took my side and he was outnumbered. So thanks to Martha, he went somewhat reluctantly, not the first time. He did not come back reluctantly. He came back that we were right in telling him it shouldn't even be your choice, because it is so important for you to go that you cannot miss this. And when they come back, they're somewhat motivated to tell other veterans whenever they speak, the guys that have been, and we're at Rotary or Kiwanis, the first message they want to say is, every veteran that can go on this needs to go. And then we call veterans, and I get, well, I'm 89, I use a walker. I said, what do you think all the other guys are? I mean, you know, they were, you're telling me the standard, not the exception. I'm on oxygen, I have medication. I said, I think I could be a pharmacist right now just from dealing with these guys. I can tell you what your medications are. I can tell you what, you know, we deal with the same group. So you are not the exception. If you're listening to this and you're 90 and you're saying, I use a walker, it's a, you know, I don't want to go. Trust two of the men that served with you when they say you have to go. It's not whether you think you're up for the trip. This is not a trip to Hollywood. This is a day that is essentially, for the most part, life-changing. That's not an exaggeration. That may be an underestimation. We change lives routinely. That is our business. People come back, say, the best day of my life. I will never forget this for the rest of my life. Our guardians that escort our veterans come back and say the Fox, can I mention another network?
Absolutely.
The Fox News reporter wrote me a letter. She traveled with us. She filmed these guys all day long at the memorial. They had to stop shooting a number of times because she lost her composure and couldn't stop the tears. She wrote me and said, the best news story of my life. Now, I'm not necessarily saying this will be, but you are invited to go on an honor flight. And when we come back, it won't be me telling you this. It will be you knowing, as a professional, you may have a better ability to convey what we're doing.
I believe it. They're covering it. It was very, very moving. Absolutely.
We had a little short interview the night before we flew, I believe, on one of the local networks. And what I noticed right away is when they finished the story, they cut back to the news desk with the two anchors, and one of the girls was in tears. And I'm thinking, these are professionals that see babies run over and firemen killed, and they hold their composure. One of them was in tears, and the other one had to sort of step in and she, oh, this sent chills down my spine. And then they just cut away from them because they weren't ready to move on to the next story. And that's just from an interview, right?
The other
gentlemen?
thing that it's so moving in many ways is the unknown that you don't think about. And Danny mentioned, for example, the medical aspects. On this last flight, we did have several problems, only from the standpoint that one of the medical units failed, and immediately the medical officer and the crew of the plane handled the situation, plugged them into the system on the plane. The deed is done. It's taken care of, and there were no ill effects whatsoever. But you wouldn't anticipate that because the individual there was taken care of with his own equipment and so, but there it was. And this goes on from the beginning of the day right straight through. It's like they have anticipated and walked through every person's life for the day and the problems that they would have. They've anticipated.
Let me pick up on what Danny said about it being life-changing. Was it that powerful?
It was.
Definitely.
Every bit.
Definitely.
Do all the memories come flooding back from?
Unfortunately, yes.
There's closure there, and it's difficult. Our guardians are, I mean, we're not psychologists, but we've seen enough down there. They know when to back off. This is not strictly an honor and a tribute. I think the greatest fear, and I know more World War II veterans than maybe anybody you'll ever meet, and I consider every one of them a very close personal friend. We're extremely close when they come back, and we stay in touch. Honor flight does not stop on a runway. It does not end on the runway. We are in touch. We're going to Paul Gibo's birthday when we get out of here. He's 92 today. But the point is, the fear they've carried with them is that what they did will be forgotten. They are so humble that even their service is not what bothers them about that forgetting. It's those that didn't come home. To every World War II vet, which we consider everyone a hero, whether he's no matter what he did or what aspect he was involved in the war, we consider every veteran we meet that served in this conflict a hero. In my eyes, every veteran's a hero, period. But these are the senior heroes of America. And we see that with our military. We pick up active duty military that joins us as an escort. They're on our bus, they have lunch, they have dinner with us, they spend the day with us. They fight over this. Our pilots fight over this. We did not have a co-pilot. We had the number 1 and the number 2 pilot of the airlines. Airlines do not put 2 pilots in the 2 seats, ever. We had one of the few flights you'll ever see with 2 pilots in it. They were both phenomenal. We get a call sign, Honor Flight 1. Every air traffic controller, you never know what's going to get you, and I don't know why. This got to me when he told me this, and I deal with more emotional stuff than this. Every air traffic controller on the eastern seaboard that got that call sign specifically told our pilots to tell these guys what an honor it was to even have that plane flying through their airspace. These guys are professionals. They don't care if it's Air Force One, Marine One, or Miss Americana plane. It's an aircraft with a number on the tail until they get to honor flight. We get priority. We get priority routes. You know, most planes don't go straight. They're routed around. Nobody flies over New York City. We did, direct. They rerouted all JFK and LaGuardia traffic. We had priority taxiways. Where did we land? We were in the nose of the aircraft was in the terminal, you know. We don't walk from runway, taxiway 6 or anything. We have priority for our buses. We have permission to get it. But the point is, everything about this flight is for them, and so is the credit from other people, and I think I speak for all my directors. I couldn't tell you how many times people come up to you, and even the reporters and the handshaking, you know, what a great thing you're doing. And I said, you know, you're wasting my time telling me that. That means nothing to me. This is a privilege. You telling me that, you know, what I'm doing is good is idiotic. I'm doing the everybody wishes they could do what I do. It is a privilege. It is something we've earned, and it's an honor. Hearing we do it well, that's a different story. That's the only place that I feel it's okay to take credit. And hearing that from an individual is okay. Hearing it from these guys is the biggest reward you could get for this. And being military, they see things most people wouldn't see. And they're always, how many times, just on this Jim, every time I ran into him, he says, I can't believe what you just did. He says, now that's it. You got. I said, well, we might have a little something else, you know, coming up. Oh my God.
Even to start with, as we were taxiing down the runway, getting ready to take off, the next thing we go through is 2 fire trucks from the base with a cannon, water cannon honor, which only happens 2 times until honor flights came in. If a plane is retiring from the service, they give them that, or if the pilot is retiring. Now the honor flight is the next situation. It's just, and it's this, every place, every time you go, the door opens and it's a new experience, totally.
So many people want to be part of it. You mentioned the pilots, the air traffic controllers.
The pilots went with us to the memorial. Now the airline wanted them to make some more flights that day, just to make money. Now we do pay the airline. I want to clear up that misconception, but they are very supportive. And the pilot said, no way. He says, I am parking this aircraft, and we have been invited to Washington, and we are not going to make a flight to Boston or whatever makes financial sense. We're going to let a $50 million aircraft just sit for 8 hours while we accept this privilege we've been offered.
You also mentioned there was a story of some Marines who drove halfway across the country.
Our fear on this flight, and I do not want to politicize the issues. But the shutdown had been pretty well resolved for us at the memorial by Gulf Coast, Mississippi on the first day of the shutdown when they removed the barricades, and then the senators got involved in a lot of publicity, and then the national media got involved. The problem was, and then I think retroactively, okay, they already are in there, now we'll give them permission. So the National Park Service gave us a permit that Honor Flight could enter the memorial. And we had a whole set of instructions: remove the barricades, put the barricades back, do not let the public in, carry your permit with you. A First Amendment permit, no less. And I'm thinking, why do we need a permit for the First Amendment? I thought that was the whole point of having rights, is you don't have to prove you're allowed to do something. The permit is in the Bill of Rights. Go read it. Why would you need a... But we didn't argue. It makes no sense that Honor Flight gets involved in anything political. That's not why we're there. So my fear was, once we got in the memorial, one of the most important things is the interaction with the American public. I mean, we got people hugging these guys all day, people moved to tears, veterans saluting them as they walk by, little kids coming up to them, have you ever been in a tank? First day we got there, I had Merwin Cowles with me on my first flight. A little kid comes up, all our veterans are around us, he says, and he's pulling his mother's sleeve, and she says, okay, she says to me, she says, he wants to meet her Marines. So I shook his hand, and I said, you just did? And he says, not you. He says, I want to meet one of them, We were fortunate, we had, among our military, we had a Navajo, the granddaughter of a Navajo code talker with us, which was such a vital thing, and they were all assigned to Marines. And this young lady, who's an Air Force active duty now, said, I want to meet your two Marines. Well, fortunately, both of them had code talk. One of them, John, was an FO, forward observer, so he had a code talker with him in the Pacific for 3 years. And he told this young lady what her legacy was, what they had done for the war effort, and to read it in a book or see it on a TV show or something, versus to hear it firsthand from this man who had so much. And John said to me, it was such an honor to meet this young lady, and she served. So we bump into people and it changes their life. It's not just the guys we're focused on. Somebody told me, one of the other flight directors, he says, Honor Flight touches everybody. If you see an Honor Flight going by, people are out of the airport, and I'll get a phone call. I'm in Atlanta, and somebody I know, an Honor Flight just landed. The whole airport's at their gate, And when we show up to the memorial, people don't know, that, I'm here to see an Honor Flight. But what you mentioned about Iwo Jima is we were denied access to Iwo, and we had 3 Marines on board, but 2 World War II Marines, although the other one wanted to go pretty badly, which was myself. And I just said, our Marines are not going to be denied. We are getting in Iwo. The corporal of the guard assigned to Arlington got his cell number to me through some means outside of his official status there, and he said, my entire troop has agreed, we will get you in the memorial, even if it, now this is Iwo Jima we're talking about, not the war memorial, and he said, we will get you in even if it costs us our jobs. Then there was a post about this million vet march, and the Washington Post picked up a comment I had made to them, and I finally got in touch with them, or they got in touch with me, because they knew I was with Honor Flight. And I said, you have to be very careful in trying to help the Honor Flight. If you have 50,000 people around that memorial, we're not getting in. And even though you support us, there isn't a bullhorn loud enough to say, excuse me, would everybody step back? It's like trying to control a mob. We could, so by having good intentions, they could easily have stopped all 7 Honor Flights this weekend. And I said, we don't need you there. Honor Flight already did their job. There's a photo going around on the internet. I don't know if your camera can see this, and this is not the photo I'm referring to. Oh, I don't even think I have it. But there's a photo. This is a Marine landing. This is called Into the Jaws of Death. I mean, this is an amphibious landing at D-Day. This is the morning of June 6th. Well, there's a new photo where it's this photo, photoshopped into the the Capitol on the, and it's the World War II Marines storming the Capitol in a Photoshop picture. So I told these leaders of the Million Vet March, we already secured our own memorial. We don't need your help there. I said, on the other hand, we're being denied access to another public open-air monument, the Iwo Jima Monument, which is very moving for every branch of the service. As a matter of fact, Jim Hayes is related to one of the 6 men, Ira Hayes. You notice H-A-Y-S, that's an unusual spelling for Hayes. Jim is related to one of the 6 men on the statue. Now, how do you think he would have felt being denied Iwo, even though we got in the memorial? So the Marines you asked about, we get there and we meet a large group of Marine veterans. And one guy comes up to shake our Marines' hands, and everybody. These guys were all one force when they were together. And even though we fight a lot about Navy and Marines, I think everybody looked up to the Marines looked up to the Navy, both branches looked up to the Army, and they all loved the Air Corps, you know. So I think they fought much better together than we fight now that we're out of the active duty. But all branches of the service won the war. The Marines just did the hard part, but that's okay.
Well,
so.
In carrying it just a little bit further, and what has been said is the fact that even to the point where, with the shutdown of everything, there were members of the armed services, prior veterans, had come in. They were actually doing the maintenance all around the monument. They were mowing. Husband and wife there, raking leaves, doing everything else, and of course the government's doing nothing.
So
at
they
that
were
point.
taking care of the
They
memorial.
were taking care of the
And they
Iwo
also
monument.
took care of you gentlemen when you were there.
Absolutely. They escorted
Definitely.
us in. They wanted to meet everybody, and they were all Marine vets, you know, Vietnam era, 90%
was
of them.
fantastic.
One guy, I said, where are you from? And he says, St. Louis. He said, I rode all night. He was on his motorcycle. 16 hours to be there for us. Not for the Million Vet March and not for the protest in the Capitol. He was there to do one thing, and that's greet North Country Honor Flight at 1,500 hours because there's 2 Marines on board. And I said, that is remarkable. He says, that's nothing. He points at another group of guys. He says, they came from Iowa. You know, Iowa to Washington is half the width of the United States. And they went to greet 15 guys, not to be part of a million something on a national front. So, and when we left, they walked us out of the memorial, and we had a good visit at the memorial.
Yes,
I think
we did.
we all got to, at first the 2 Marines were up, then they asked me to join them, then it was just the 3 Marines up there. Then Jim came up and explained why. I thought, well, you know, he's Navy, and then everybody got in the picture, and we were back to the honor flight. We just happened to be at a different monument. When we left, all these vets that had come to greet us, we were going up to Jefferson, which is probably, I don't know, a quarter mile from where we had parked. The police had blocked off an area allowing us to park. They gave us, Arlington Police gave us 2 squad cars, lights and sirens. We've never got an escort on a good day in Washington when there's nothing going on. And with the shutdown, we thought it would be impossible to get a police, and they gave us an escort. But the beauty of it, we rolled out of there with the 2 police car escorts, and all those Marines that had come were lined up all the way to Jefferson, saluting as we went by. And I don't think anybody on the bus wasn't moved by that, regardless. It was just.
Well, that was the repeat that was happening all through the whole day.
From the morning, from the dawn,
From the dawn
until when you
until
arrived
we-
home at night.
And even after we arrived, because as we were leaving home, there was still, or leaving the Oval to go home, the people were still congregated there. The local police pipes and drums were there, and all kinds of people.
We normally get a modest reception when we come back. You know, it's 10:40 at night, and mostly honor flight people and family members, and a few attached people to our specific group that just support what we do. But we sort of hoped this would be a bigger flight, and it was in the morning. We had close to 100 Harleys rolling out in front of us. The motorcycles were beautiful, and the combat vets led it, and the Patriot Guard, and the Harley
Each had
Owners
their
Group,
flag on the back.
Sons of the Legions. But coming back, we had the pipes and drums come back. We had a big crowd coming
Yes.
back. I mean, just a thunderous ovation for everyone, you know, as you come off. And these guys are tired, but they're just, what a welcome home. Peru Fire Department is there every time we come home with their vehicles at the north end of the runway. We see it from 10,000 feet. You look down, and I said, you see those 3 sets of lights? That's Peru Fire Department welcoming you home even before we touch down. So we definitely had the biggest return reception we've ever had. Now, we packed the airport in the morning. There is no room in that building, very little room outside. I'd like to see that same crowd when we come home, but maybe we'll get there on our own. The important thing is for this flight, we were going to an unknown. This wasn't the norm, and I promised these guys, I said, this may not be the smoothest honor flight we ever had, but it'll be the most exciting one. You know, and it was somewhat historic to us because we went at a time when I think America needs heroes, and America found the best heroes we have. America is now looking at these guys just like what they did here. They are storming the beaches for our freedom again. Not so much even just figuratively, they're practically, literally showing that, the problem with our government is they may have thought they could do anything, and they found out this is one area that the American public will not stand being dishonored. You can do just about anything in this country and get away with it, but you can't dishonor these veterans, and America is fighting back. I believe these men are going to see these few fall honor flights, not just ours, but there's been over 100 probably since mid-September. We fly 300 times a year, and we only fly in September and October because earlier is too hotly. So just at least 150 flights all over the country. I think people are going to look at these as historic. People are going to say, Charlie Smith, 10th Mountain Division, very close friend of ours. He went down there for his 10th Mountain Division reunion and then met us at the memorial. There's a poster of him out now on some CNN website or something. Local guy Charlie, because he still fits in his uniform. He's the only one I've met out of 100. What's wrong with you guys?
Well, let me ask a few really quick questions. With the government shutdown, did it, maddening, but did it have that much of an impact or inconvenience
Yes
on
and no.
your trip?
It could have, because it had the potential, not just the closed gates. We were going any place we needed to go, and that was established. We had an active duty Navy Armed Forces member show up with tools and stuff if we had to dismantle. The shutdown was not physically going to stop us, period. Every honor flight had decided that in advance. We will see the 3 memorials we planned, or whatever. Not every honor flight does what our order is, but we were not going to miss something over the shutdown. And it's not all about civil disobedience. It's just about, we didn't care. We didn't care. But my fear was that it would sensationalize our trip, and it had the negative impact of turning it into a carnival-like atmosphere, everybody sticking a mic. Now, we had guys trying to interview some of our veterans, and I just walked over, put my arm around their shoulder, says, come on over here, we're going to take a picture. These guys are standing there, national media. Duh, I'm filming. Duh, we're not here for you to film us. You weren't here the last 300 flights. Why are you here today? The same goes for our politicians. Some may have helped us, some may have caused this. But the point is, showing up the first time, and my question is, where were you on the other 200 flights this year? Where have you been for the last 8 years for the 114,000 we've flown? How come you didn't shake those hands? So there was the potential for grandstanding. We defused it by trying to not allow that. And I think the Fox News story last night was well done in that it said, they didn't come here for that. And they were filming our honor flight. And these guys were on national news last night, all of us. And they said the honor flight just came here for the same purpose it always comes here. And they did their job and they left. So I believe we I think Earl told me, he says the guy wanted some political stuff in an interview, and I just said I'm not going to go there.
So Fox News is doing a special for Veterans Day that included.
Well, we don't know the date, but they did send the editor of the Kelly Files, Jovian Y, with a videographer,
So they shot his
and
story.
they joined us at BWI. They stayed with us the entire day. She was in tears when she had to leave at night and say goodbye to these guys. They were very unobtrusive. They did a good job. We had a few ground rules, and the ground rules were nothing political. You're there to find out, the interview you would have done a month ago before there was any focus on honor flight. And they did. They stuck to that. And in return, we promised them access to our veterans, which they had some incredible stories. And we had some incredible guys with us. We always do, and they're all incredible. It was just, we had a general, Sherman J. Gage. We've never had a general grade officer. World War II B-17 pilot. We had Clayton Ray, won the Silver Star at Bastogne. He's the highest decorated, that's third highest Medal of Valor in the United States military. So we had a Silver Star recipient. There's very few to begin with, but there's very few still alive. Earl won the Bronze Star. He's wearing that. We had some, and not that matters, the rank, or that we don't even talk about the rank. Somebody said, why don't you announce the rank? We introduce every veteran at our ceremonies, twice actually, once at each ceremony. And somebody asked Colonel King, why don't you mention the rank? He says, because they have the best rank there is, and that is veteran. So we do not refer to Jim as a petty officer, or to Earl as an E6 or something. They are our veterans, and we did our job. We did not let the media distract us. The public was not there to sensationalize anything, and we got our mission done. And it's like having your board meeting at the county fair. That's not the best venue, but you could still get your job done if you were extremely focused. I think if this had been our first flight, it might have been a little tougher.
So you didn't let it detract from your day?
No, at the last minute, and last minute for us is well in advance, myself and my executive officer, Colonel George King, decided to go along with a flight leader that had already been assigned. Our procedure is we change, every director gets to lead a flight. You have to be second in command on a flight one time, and then the next flight you move up and you lead it. We did change that protocol, so both George and I were present, and that was mostly because we expected the possibility of having to defuse a situation, or interviews that we didn't want to see anybody steer them in a direction. I saw stuff on the news where our veterans, honor flight, not our flight, I believe it was Puget Sound on Sunday from Washington, they were rolling into their memorial, and the newscaster says, the World War II veterans are at the White House. They weren't at the White House. If you knew what the memorial liked, you would know that. And they're getting a big round, and all these 90-year-old veterans are at the White House. And I said, well, I wish the memorial was the White House. Then one of these guys would be our president. But I thought it was that's what we were afraid of, honor flight being used as a pawn in a political exploitation, and that did not happen. We are protective about these guys in that we care for them. Their medical is important. We know everything about them in those regards, and we were protective this time in their personal space, if you will, that they were there for something bigger. The budget will get resolved. These guys will never get another chance. This was more important to me than the shutdown. And I've seen news and reporters, and I know I'm going too long, but I'll close on this. They're saying, well, it's not that big a deal. The memorial closed. What's important is the veterans aren't getting their checks and all this. The veterans that aren't getting their checks are my age. The memorial was closed to these gentlemen of this age. This is, in my eyes, the most dangerous injustice of the shutdown, that we could have taken away life-changing moments from the greatest heroes in this country. That's worth more to me than late welfare checks and furloughed. And I understand all that's important if it's your family and your check and your job. But it just pales in comparison to the honor that could have been missed. And I think honor flight as a whole, the national group of us, as united as these guys were in combat. I think Honor Flight as a whole deserves a huge amount of credit
Well, the
for having
culmination of-
stayed focused, done our job, and not let this massive distraction take us away from what our mission is. So.
The culmination at the National Cemetery in Arlington was phenomenal because we were there to see the changing of the guard, which is very, very impressive. Plus, there were, I think, an unprecedented three wreaths were presented after the ceremony that were there.
The wreath ceremony is
Yeah.
just stunning,
And
and they did a
it
three
is-
wreath ceremony. I've never seen one or heard of one. Taps 3 times, and we are the only people that have access at Arlington. If this is the changing of the guard, Honor Flight gets these 2 areas chained off, cordoned off. We have an officer lets us in. No civilians get in there. We have to lean back when the sergeant of the guard walks by because he's brushing up
close.
against you.
That's incredible.
Everybody was, and it's our last thing. We close with that. That's our. So, and you know, we've done the drill. We know that's a good way to close this. It stays with you.
2 very quick questions at the end. Today, you were all at a funeral, and you mentioned the gentlemen who go on this trip, the veterans who go on this trip. That's not the end of it. You go to funerals.
Well, the funerals is not the big thing. We do whatever the community asks. They, as a rule, everyone that came back on an honor flight wants to somehow serve the community that sent them there. Our group, North Country Honor Flight, we did not pay for this. The North Country paid for this. We paid for this one chicken dinner at a time, one T-shirt sold at the mall display we do, posters, hats, whatever we need. But the community has stepped up, and we raised $75,000 in a little over 5 months for our 5 flights. And you know, in the North Country, with a small group, and the problem is, we are focused on logistics. We don't have the time to raise our money. But to answer your question, because these men and the other 78 that have flown with us are aware that it's a community that sent us there, it's the North Country that reached in their pockets and made a $100 donation. Anything the community asks, they'll be there. We were at the Battle of Plattsburgh for the fireworks. We've done 9 parades, I think, this year. We're the lead float of honor. We won every parade trophy there is and every grand prize. I'm always afraid of wearing them out. So, well, we just did 4th of July. Now we got another parade, and then we got an out. So, fortunately, the group is getting bigger, so we can switch. But they give back, and I think the most meaningful or the most emotional request we're asked is when a World War II veteran dies, whether we knew him or not. Mr. Rock this morning, nobody there knew him personally, but he was a World War II veteran. The family asked us to be there. So we joined American Legion post 1619, who had the honor guard and the rifle salute. And I'm going to guess there was 8 or 9 of us.
At least.
Always
At
looking
least.
sharp. They
Floyd
wear their
Rock,
medals.
an Army veteran from Katyville.
Yes,
and
sir,
a
that's
World-
correct. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
A World War II veteran, and those are the type of things you do in the community.
Right, we've been to schools. We've been to Saranac School, did a presentation to what they call the Freedom Club, which is a group within Saranac that's extremely commendable, and we could do a whole show about the Freedom Club.
Yeah.
But if we're asked, we'll do it. We have some schools want us to bring the Honor Flight movie and show it at their schools, the documentary, One Last Mission. I don't think there's any legitimate request that Honor Flight would not respond to if the community invites these veterans to participate in something. We'll be there if it's worthwhile, and if it's their way and our way as the directors of giving something back.
So it doesn't end with the flight.
It
So
does
it's
not
a
end
total
with the flight.
educational experience. Anything that we can do that way to assist and to promote and to express a thanks from all of us who have had the opportunity to participate.
That's nice.
In terms, and you promised me, and you remind me, and you did. So I'm going to go over it just a second. But this is an example of what the community has done for us. One of our veterans, John Rasmussen from Mineville, is a Marine. In June, he gave up his seat for another veteran, the last seat on the aircraft, and did not get to fly. And he said, "I'll go next time." Well, next time came around, and his wife requires 24/7 medical attention. And in June, he had that covered. One of his family members was going to take care of his wife. In October, they weren't available. So he calls me early on, late September. He says, I can't go. There's nobody to take care of my wife. And I said, John, you're going to go. I don't know what we're going to do, but you're going to go. So we always have medical staff on our flights. We carry at least 2 nurses, sometimes a doctor, sometimes an EMT. But medical is very important to us, so we're tied into the medical community with our own volunteers. I put a post on Facebook. It got 3,000 views that night. The next day, we had 8 nurses volunteer. They went down. They did an 18-hour shift from 4 a.m. till midnight caring for John's wife. They doubled up so that they wouldn't be alone 70 miles from here in Mineville. And the best part is, he had not left her side in 10 years, and you would have thought on that flight he would have been worrying. I didn't give him an update until we were leaving BWI Airport at 8 o'clock at night. I said, John, I got a text. Your wife's doing great. She had a wonderful day. He says, I was fine. He says, as long as you were in charge of her, I knew she was getting the same treatment. So that's the community stepped up. Honor Flight did not take care of that lady, but an Honor Flight veteran knows he's indebted to the entire community. One of these nurses came from, I think, Chateaugay. Well, I don't know. Chateaugay to Mineville has got to be 150 miles. It's not like they were his neighbors. So just a final example to why we want to give so much back to the community. The community has supported Honor Flight, and that, I think, is only going to intensify and grow. Because it's somebody said this is the best, I don't know, a post or something. They said of all the commendable groups out there, Honor Flight ranks right at the top of the list. And I think you see that when this is why we do it. And you don't have to look past this table to understand why we do this and what we do and why we try to do it so well. And there's 800 more of these guys in the North Country. We got to find them together, and they all have to have the experience that Earl and Jim and 13 others and 80 total this year have had. So,
Danny Kafitz, Earl Schmidt, and Jim Hayes, thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you for having us.